Here we are at Zura Hot Yoga in our teacher training program in New Jersey, Bloomfield, New Jersey, and we're going over half moon with the help of Sarah and hands to feet pose. So half moon pose. We're going to start feet together, toes and heels touching. The inner thighs are going to rotate in. I call that the inner spiral. Tailbone turns down. She's going to bring her arms overhead. Interlace the fingers, index finger release. This is a traditional grip. In the old days, we did this grip, which is much harder. That your hands flat together and over to the side. Do that for a second. Flat hands. If she were to go over here to the side, much harder to maintain the leverage for the position. Somewhere back in the late 1980s, Bikram went away somewhere, came back and changed it from this to this, and it was like, thank goodness, because this is so much easier. So, interlace the fingers, index finger release. She's going to tick-tock side to side. And you're going to think about just lifting up and over. You're not just going side to side. And that's going to get you into a nice position, head's right in the center. And the key is you want to maintain this symmetry throughout the entire time. So her head is right in the center of her arms. When she goes over to the side, she doesn't want to collapse and look down. She doesn't want to look up to the ceiling either. She wants to maintain this symmetric position. So even a little bit more chin up. So if I take my hand, my thumb into her middle back, see the difference? I bring her up and over. So she maintains that symmetry, heads to the side. Okay, come back up. Now, if we go over, let's go over to the left side. When we go over to the left side, so she's going to inhale, comes up and over. She's going to push her hips to the right, which is so important because this is an opposite direction. So come back up again. If Sarah were to just go to the right and not move her hips, she's going to be stuck. But to get her hips going over to the left as she's reaching to the right gives that opposite direction to get her into that side body. But sometimes when that happens, this hip comes back. You've got to make sure that the hip stays forward so the hips are square and the shoulders are square, chin up, arms back. So once again, people like to collapse like Sarah was just about to do. So I get her here to maintain that position. I'll come up and over to the other side. Another opposite direction is just what I did before. As her chest comes out, her arms come back. So it's hips right, arms left, chest out, arms back. And here's the third opposite direction, which is really a great one. From the right hip to the right heel, she presses down to the floor, and from the right hip all the way up her side body, she creates this opposite direction. And then come back up. And that's really Par's Ardha Chandrasana. We talked about that before. Side half moon pose. Before we continue on, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Hit the notification bell. Any questions or concerns about this pose especially, put them down below. I'm happy to get back to you. So Gabri has now magically appeared. His question, I just adjusted him in class. As he goes over to the side, what was happening? What was happening was he was collapsing in with his shoulders and collapsing his chest. So I grabbed his hand, put my thumb in his middle back, and lifted him up and over. So that's that opposite direction again. The chest comes out and the arms come back, and the arms are a little straighter, chin up, and now he comes over to the side in a nice symmetric position. It feels better, right?
A lot better.
Yeah, a lot better. So the breathing should be what Bikram would call 80-20, what I call percentage breath. As she goes over to the side, she inhales up and over, and just a little bit of exhale, short sips. Once 10% is out of the body, or 20%, take it back in again. So you have at least 80% of the breath in your lungs throughout the whole time. Little bit more as you press down at the end, you get a little more energy out, a little more exhale out to give you that range of motion. And then come up. That was really good. Arms overhead. What happens is people sometimes collapse because they're making the goal how far down you can go. How far down you can go. It's not how far down you can go. You're better off staying up here in a properly positioned pose than how far down you can go. Now, if you can stay properly aligned, keeping the symmetry, and then you see how far down you can go. But all of a sudden, let's say you start to collapse, you've gone too far. Come back up here. Alignment is more important. You never want to compensate proper alignment for what you think is going further in the pose. So once you're out of position, you're out of the pose. Does that make sense? So we did the right side and we did the left side. Now we're going to go backward, which is actually the real half moon. So her arms overhead. They should have been overhead the whole time. If you have a neck issue, a real good modification is to keep your arms glued to your ears the whole time. So she would go back like so. That's how you're protecting the neck. Because some people just can't let their neck fall, or they can't let their head fall because the neck is too tight. So don't do that. Keep the arms glued to the ears. However, if there's no neck issue, relax the head, let it fall. First move, I like to turn the tailbone slightly down. Then she's going to lift her chest up and reach back behind. What you want to try to do is give yourself a tangible goal. So the opposite direction is the hips are going forward, but not too far forward if you're super flexible. You don't want to get the hips go too far forward. And then she would reach back and touch my hand, but keep the arms straight, as if she was giving herself a tangible goal. Reach back and touch my hand. Reach back and touch my hand. Exhale, reach back and touch my hand. As she continues to go back, she gives herself that tangible goal and staying properly positioned in back bend half moon. So we came out of the back bend and now we go to a whole other pose. A lot of people think that the hands to feet pose is part of half moon. It's just a combination pose. So this is the second pose in the series. Hands to feet, Padahastasana. She's going to come down with a straight back, arms straight to the floor. Now let's say you're not able to do that. Come back up again. Let's say you don't have that range of motion. You're not that flexible. What she can do is she can bend her knees and come down with a flat back. Big difference. Takes a lot of pressure off the lower back. Come back up again. Let's say you can't even do that. Especially, say you're doing a really early morning class or you're really tight or you hurt yourself. She could come down, bend her knees, place her hands on her thighs. Come down, touch the floor with one hand, then the floor with the other hand. Same thing on the way up. One hand to the thigh, then the other hand. Up you go. So that's a good way of protecting the back. Don't be forced. But bending the knees should do it for most people if they have a tight back. But ideally the legs are straight. So come back down again. Try to touch the hands all the way to the floor without. All the way, all the way, all the way, all the way. Yes. And now she can bend her knees back and forth, left and right a few times. Shake it out. Good, good, good. If you don't have a knee issue, you can do a little squat. Take the pressure off the lower back. And say that first. If you don't have a knee issue, do a little squat. Otherwise, you could hurt their back or their knees. Come back up again. Now, I'm going to have her, I'm sorry, sit down. We're going to have her bring her hands underneath the heels. Hands come around the backs of the legs. I'm going to have her bend her knees more. I want to look at the beginning level first. Stomach on the thighs, chest to the knees. A little bit later, the face into the shins. Keep your knees bent. So press your face right in there. There you go. And slowly she begins to straighten her legs, 1/4 inch, a couple centimeters at a time. Whole upper body's flat against the leg. Bikram would say Japanese ham sandwich because the ham was so thin you couldn't even see it. So that's the whole idea of that, until the legs are straight. So bend your knees a little bit more. A lot of people are going to be here. If you press your face into the shins and the hips come forward to this motion, the legs begin to straighten out. Now in the advanced, it's a little different. In fact, the old days, we never brought our fingers underneath the heels. That came later on also. The true grip is to get the hands around the backs of the heels. So arms overhead, down she goes with straight back. So now that Sarah can straighten her legs, she no longer wants to bring her fingers underneath the heels, because if you bring the fingers underneath the heels at this level, you're actually shortening the hamstring. So what we're going to do is we're going to cup the heels from the back. Go ahead. So the thumbs are on the outside, fingers are on the inside, like that. All the way around. Now you're almost like trying to feel like you're touching your elbows behind you. It'll never happen, but that's the feeling you want to get. And now she begins to straighten her legs down. Her chin should still touch the shins. And then she looks down at her feet. Her shoulders come up to the ceiling. Keep your chin on your shins though. And she starts working her head to her feet. Vishnu Ghosh, Bikram's teacher, would call this head to feet pose because that's the full position. So bring your chin a little bit closer to your shins. That's it. Pull your shoulders up to the ceiling. Good. And eventually the head to the feet. Come forward a little bit more. Straighten the legs. There it is. And now she comes up the same way she went down. Arms out in front of her. Palms together. Come up. Arms by your side. In the old days, in order to get to the position, as you get more advanced, you have to think of this one equation. No extra movement or economy of motion. So what she would do is bring her arms overhead, and she'd go down right to the full position. So exhale, down you go right to your full position. The arms come right around behind. Don't bend your knees. Boom. Get the face in there. Boom. No extra motion. There's no way you could do that if you brought your fingers underneath the heels. It wouldn't happen. Now she comes back up again, arms out in front. Bend your knees if you need to. Sarah's level, she doesn't have to. Arms by the side. And that's half moon pose with hands to feet. That's our episode for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Hit the notification bell. Any questions, comments, put them down below. I'm happy to get back to you. If you want to learn all about hot yoga, hit the subscribe button and like button right now. I'll see you the next video. Wave. Bye, guys.